Dubai spent over $20 billion to build land where there was only ocean. And if the science is right, the ocean is slowly taking it back. Right now, on the coast of the Arabian Peninsula sits a series of sculptures made of sand, islands shaped like palm trees, and a man-made archipelago that forms a map of the entire world. They are home to sprawling mansions, luxury hotels, and a population that bought into a vision of the impossible. They live, work, and sleep on land that did not exist 20 years ago. Land held together by engineering and sheer ambition, but that land is built on a foundation of shifting sand in a rising sea. For years, official reports have called it stable, secure, a triumph of human will. But the satellite data and the laws of physics tell a different story. Not a sudden collapse, not a single event. Why, a slow, quiet, and relentless process of erosion and subsidence. Sinking. The islands are sinking, so the city did what it always does. It announced new projects, bigger projects, more audacious plans built on the same model, with the same fundamental risk. These are the stories mainstream reports won't show you, the complex truth behind the headlines. If you believe understanding these forces is critical, you need to be here. Subscribe now so you don't miss what's coming next. It's important. Let's begin. The real question is, did Dubai build a permanent extension of its coastline, or did they just construct the world's most expensive sandcastles waiting for the tide to inevitably come in? Dubai was never supposed to be a global metropolis. The emirate sits on the edge of the Arabian Desert, a region defined by heat, aridity, and a reliance on a single economic engine: oil. In the late 1990s, Dubai's ruler, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, understood a fundamental truth that other leaders in the region had yet to fully confront. The oil would not last forever. An economy built entirely on a finite resource was not an economy. It was a countdown. The vision was to transform Dubai into a global hub for finance, luxury tourism, and international trade, a bridge between East and West. But to attract the world's wealthiest individuals and biggest corporations, Dubai needed something it didn't have enough of: coastline. Prime oceanfront real estate is the ultimate currency of luxury. Dubai had only 72 kilometers of it, and most of it was already developed or designated for industrial port use. The solution was not to find more coastline, it was to create it. By every conventional measure of engineering and economics, the idea was absurd. Dredge millions of tons of sand from the bottom of the ocean and pile it up until it broke the surface, forming new, stable land where none had ever existed. It was a project that defied both nature and financial precedent. And yet, for a city determined to write its own destiny, it was the only option. In 2001, the state-owned developer Nakheel Properties broke ground. Not on land, but in the water. The project was called Palm Jumeirah. It would be an artificial island shaped like a date palm tree, a symbol deeply tied to the region's culture, but executed on a scale the world had never seen. An archipelago that would add over 500 kilometers of new coastline to the city. It was a statement. Dubai was no longer just participating in the future. It was building it from the bottom of the sea. It was a vision of unparalleled ambition. But was it genius or was it hubris? Let me know what you think in the comments below. The mechanics of creating land from water are brutal and relentless. The first challenge was the sand itself. Desert sand, the kind that surrounds Dubai for thousands of square miles, is useless for this kind of construction. Its grains are too smooth, rounded by millennia of wind erosion. They don't bind together under pressure. They simply slide past one another. To build a stable island, engineers needed marine sand. Sand dredged directly from the floor of the Persian Gulf, whose angular, irregular grains would lock together when compacted. A fleet of dredgers, some of the largest in the world, was assembled. These were not simple ships. They were floating factories, designed for a single purpose: to inhale the seabed. Trailing suction hopper dredgers, gargantuan vessels over 100 meters long, scraped the ocean floor, pulling millions of cubic meters of sand and rock into their holds. They then sailed to the designated coordinates and deposited the material layer by layer in a process called rainbowing. A high-pressure stream of sand and water arcing from the ship, slowly building a new geology from nothing. Over 94 million cubic meters of sand were dredged from a site 10 nautical miles offshore and sprayed into place to form the palm's fronds and trunk. To put that in perspective, that is enough sand to build a wall 2 meters high that could circle the globe 3 times over. It was a geological scale operation, executed on a construction timeline. But piling up sand is not enough. The structure had to be fortified. The engineers used a technique called vibrocompaction. Massive, vibrating probes, some over 10 meters long, were driven deep into the newly formed sand deposits. The intense vibrations shook the sand grains, forcing them to settle closer together, squeezing out water and air pockets, increasing the density and stability of the artificial landmass. It is a violent, man-made earthquake, repeated thousands upon thousands of times across the entire footprint of the island. Without it, the sand would be prone to liquefaction, a terrifying phenomenon where saturated soil loses its strength and behaves like a liquid capable of swallowing entire buildings. The final piece of the engineering puzzle was the breakwater, a crescent-shaped barrier 11 kilometers long, designed to protect the fragile palm from the open sea. It was not a solid wall, which would have created stagnant water inside. It was constructed from over 7 million tons of mountain rock, quarried from the nearby Hubris Mountains, strategically placed to allow water circulation while absorbing the energy of incoming waves. Each rock was individually placed by crane, guided by GPS to form a precise, porous barrier against the raw power of the ocean. The scale of this achievement is hard to comprehend. If you find this story as fascinating as I do, take a moment to like this video and share it with a friend or family member who would appreciate the sheer scale of this project. By 2006, the land was formed. The island was there. It was visible from space. Palm Jumeirah was a success. An engineering marvel that stunned the world and put Dubai on the map in a way no skyscraper ever could. Luxury villas began to line the fronds. The Atlantis Hotel rose from its apex. The vision had been made real. It should have been a permanent victory. But here is what the promotional brochures did not show you. The ocean never stops fighting back. Buoyed by the success of Palm Jumeirah, Dubai immediately doubled down. If one artificial archipelago was possible, why not another? A bigger one, a more symbolic one. The next project was called The World, a collection of 300 man-made islands arranged to form a loose map of the planet. Wealthy investors could buy countries, entire private islands where they could build their own exclusive retreats. The concept was pure Dubai, audacious, exclusive, and breathtakingly expensive. Our construction began in 2003, even before Palm Jumeirah was complete. The same methods were used: dredge, spray, compact. Over 320 million cubic meters of sand and 31 million tons of rock were put into place. But the world was different from the Palm in one critical way. It was not a single connected landmass. It was a scattered collection of small islands sitting in the open ocean, protected only by a massive outer breakwater. Each individual island was far more vulnerable to the forces of erosion. Then, in 2008, the world changed. The global financial crisis hit, and the international flow of capital that fueled Dubai's explosive growth seized up overnight. The market for private, multi-million-dollar islands evaporated. Construction on the world ground to a halt, and the islands were left sitting there, bare, uninhabited, unprotected by seawalls or vegetation, just piles of carefully compacted sand, exposed to the relentless energy of the Persian Gulf. This is the turning point where the story complicates. If you're just joining us and want to keep exploring these high-stakes stories, make sure you're subscribed. It's the only way to guarantee you see our future investigations. Nature began to reclaim its territory almost immediately. The process is known as subsidence. It is the natural tendency of loose material to settle and compact over time. Every artificial island in the world experiences it. The question is not if, but how fast. Without constant development, without the construction of retaining walls, buildings, and root systems from vegetation to hold the sand in place, the erosion was visible and rapid. Satellite imagery from NASA began to tell a story that official statements from the developer, Nakheel, would not. The crisp outlines of the countries began to blur. The narrow channels between them started to fill in with silt. In 2011, a company contracted to provide logistics for the islands told a property tribunal that the islands were gradually eroding back into the sea. Nakheel Properties publicly and fiercely denied the claims, stating that the islands were stable and that any observed changes were part of the natural settling process. They called the claims wholly inaccurate, but the images from space were hard to argue with. From orbit, it looked less like a map of the world and more like a collection of smudges. The geological scar was fading. The ocean was editing Dubai's masterpiece. The problem runs deeper than simple erosion. The very act of building the islands changed the marine environment in ways that are still not fully understood. The massive breakwaters, designed to protect the real estate, also block the natural flow of ocean currents. The water inside the Palm Jumeirah's crescent and between the islands of the world becomes stagnant. Without the natural flushing of tides, water temperature rises, salinity increases, and algae blooms become more frequent. The clear turquoise water shown in the advertisements often gives way to a murky, uninviting green. The environmental cost was staggering and immediate. The dredging process itself buried an estimated 70 square kilometers of coral reef, oyster beds, and seagrass fields that were vital nurseries for local marine life. The clouds of silt and sediment kicked up by the dredgers, a phenomenon known as turbidity, choked surrounding ecosystems, blocking sunlight and smothering anything that couldn't move. The construction of Palm Jumeirah and the world effectively sterilized a vast patch of the Persian Gulf seabed. A vibrant marine habitat was sacrificed for a real estate opportunity. It was a trade-off made with the quiet assumption that nature was a resource to be managed, or, if necessary, paved over. But the consequences of that trade-off are now part of the island's very existence. The engineering challenge never truly ends. An artificial island is not a one-time construction project. It is a perpetual war against entropy. The sand that was dredged from the seafloor never stops wanting to return there. The official term is coastal nourishment, but it is a simple concept. The islands require constant replenishment. Sand is regularly added back to the beaches and shorelines to replace what the waves and currents carry away. It is an ongoing maintenance cost, a tax on existence that will have to be paid for as long as the islands are intended to survive. This reality is rarely mentioned in the sales pitches. The price of a villa on the Palm does not include a line item for the geological instability of the ground it is built on. Yet, that instability is a permanent feature. For the residents and investors in the world islands, the problem was even more acute. Most of the islands remain undeveloped to this day. A few have been built on, like the Heart of Europe project, a cluster of islands styled after European cities. I must say, but the majority are still barren sandbanks, owned by investors who bought a dream in 2007 and were left with a liability after 2008. They are locked in a battle not just with the market, but with physics. Their asset is literally dissolving, and beneath the surface, a more insidious threat is growing: sea level rise. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change projects that global sea levels could rise by as much as a meter by the end of the century. The Persian Gulf is not immune. The islands were built with a specific elevation, a calculated freeboard above the current sea level. But that calculation was based on the climate models of the early 2000s, models that are now widely considered conservative. As the baseline water level of the entire Gulf rises, the effectiveness of the breakwaters diminishes. Wave energy reaching the islands increases. Coastal flooding becomes a more frequent and severe risk. The islands are not just sinking from their own weight, the ocean itself is rising to meet them. The problem is twofold: subsidence from below and sea level rise from above. A geological vice slowly tightening. Nikhil has stated that the designs accounted for long-term sea level changes, but the rate of that change is accelerating in ways that planners 2 decades ago did not fully anticipate. What was once considered a 100-year storm event may become a decadal event, or more frequently. The margin of safety that was engineered into the islands is shrinking. The most extreme example of this ambition and its potential folly is not the Palm or the world, but the projects that followed. The Dubai waterfront, a project intended to be the largest man-made development in the world, was designed to wrap around the final Palm Island, Palm Jebel Ali. Palm Jebel Ali itself was designed to be 50% larger than Palm Jumeirah. Construction began, the basic landform was dredged, and then the 2008 crisis hit. Today, Palm Jebel Ali exists as a ghostly outline in the sea, a half-finished sand sculpture visible on Google Earth, a multi-billion-dollar testament to a dream that was paused indefinitely. The waterfront project was canceled entirely. This legacy of half-finished megaprojects is a quiet reminder of the razor's edge on which Dubai's development model operates. It requires immense, continuous inflows of global capital. When that capital hesitates, the dreams are left to dissolve back into the sea. And yet, the ambition does not wane. The city continues to announce new marvels, new islands, new coastal developments, each one built on the same fundamental premise, that engineering can and will conquer nature. We're approaching the final, unsettling questions of this story. For those of you who have watched this far, your attention proves these stories matter. If you haven't yet, hitting subscribe is the single best way to support our work and ensure we can continue to bring these truths to light. The ultimate question is one of permanence. Was Dubai building a city for the ages or a temporary spectacle? The comparison to a sandcastle is more than just a metaphor. It is a literal description of the materials and the physics involved. The difference is the scale and the hubris. The belief that with enough money, enough rock, and enough vibrocompaction, the fundamental rules of coastal geology can be permanently suspended. Geologists talk about deep time, the slow, inexorable processes that shape the planet over millions of years. The formation of coastlines, the erosion of mountains, the movement of sand. Dubai's islands are an attempt to compress geological time into a construction schedule. A 10,000-year process executed in 5 years. But nature operates on its own timeline. The forces of erosion, subsidence, and sea level rise are patient. They do not operate on quarterly earnings reports or real estate cycles. They are constants. The breakwaters will need to be maintained. The beaches will need to be nourished. The sand will continue to settle. The maintenance is perpetual. The cost is permanent. Dubai is not a cautionary tale, not in the simple sense. It is a testament to what is possible. The engineering is real. The city that was built in the desert is real. The millions of people who live and work on land reclaimed from the sea are real. The Palm Jumeirah remains a global icon, a stunningly successful piece of real estate that redefined what a city could be. It is not failing. It is being maintained. But at what cost? And for how long? The islands exist in a state of managed instability, a constant, expensive, and energy-intensive battle against the very environment they displaced. The uncomfortable question that lingers over every stunning aerial photograph is whether this model is sustainable, not just financially, but physically. The world islands serve as a silent, ongoing experiment. What happens when the maintenance stops? What happens when the flow of money is interrupted? And the answer is written in the blurring outlines of the satellite photos. The land softens, the edges blur, the map fades. The story of Dubai's islands is not unique to Dubai. It is a magnified version of a struggle happening on coastlines around the world. From the Netherlands to the Maldives to Miami, humanity is in a fight against a rising and more powerful ocean. Dubai's approach was simply the most audacious. Instead of defending the existing coast, it built a new one, a more luxurious one. It bet billions that its engineering was better than the ocean's patience. The final irony is that the sand used to build the islands, a resource that seemed infinite, is now becoming scarce. The high-quality marine sand needed for land reclamation is a finite global commodity. The very act of building these islands has contributed to the depletion of the resource needed to maintain them. The solution has become part of the problem. Dubai traded one finite resource, oil, for another. Real estate built on a foundation that requires permanent defense. The world's most expensive islands are not just sinking. They are a monument to an idea. The idea that nature is a problem to be solved through engineering, a canvas to be painted over. But the ocean is not a canvas. It is the artist, and it is still painting. The tide is still coming in, and the clock is still running.